Nothing better than a little nettle, licorice, and gynostemma. Mm-hmm. Good evening. Welcome to my living room. My name is Lana Labonte, and I'm here to support, uplift, inspire, and hopefully that empowers you to be the best you can be. Because there's nobody else like you. You are unique. Even though we are supposedly all drops within the ocean and ultimately the ocean itself, each drop has qualities and expressions that make them uniquely them. Me, myself, and I, you, yourself, and you. Let's see what we can do. The more we heal the past, the old programming, the old traumas, we can return to our truth, our true identity. And in Kundalini Yoga, we call it our Satnam. Namaste is also the same in Sanskrit. It is the truth within, the layers below the surface, not the surface. This is not who I am. I am not my mind. I am not my thoughts. But I am the observer and I am the witness, experiencer of this reality, this human existence. That when we recognize that we are all souls inhabiting this human form, that we are sitting in the seat of consciousness, the Atma, the Brahma, the Shiva, the Vishnu, the spirit within that makes you the gift of the now. It takes us to tap into our inner wisdom through breathing in the moment, becoming so present with ourselves here and now, so present that we recognize the play on words, that we are the gift in the now. There is nothing outside of us that isn't mirroring what's inside of us. So when life shows up to you, can you have humility? Can you be humble enough to see that you attracted that because something within you needed your attention? And so when you didn't go within, you went without. Energetically, your inner child that still has unresolved trauma, that feels neglected and abandoned. Yes, and by you, just like I've had to work on me. That inner child will throw what we'll call an energetic temper tantrum. So the inner child does the, fine, you're not paying attention to me, watch this. I'm going to call in somebody else. I'm going to call in a third party so that we can work through this. And although you may not realize that we did this, that we chose this, it was because you were neglecting and not paying attention to me. Can't you see? What's wrong with me that you don't see me? That awkward inner child, the one that we all identify with when you go back to your childhood, because you can remember the experiences that made you feel uncomfortable, that made you feel like that outsider, that misfit, that awkward kid. And I guarantee if you're here right now, you're recognizing, wow, maybe I forgot about that. But then we've all felt that way. I don't think there's a single person on this planet that hasn't felt like the outsider, like a misfit. What's wrong with me? So that inner child is always vying for our attention. And where everybody has vices and addictions and they seek validation outside of themselves, really what your inner child needs from you is you. Is you to let it know, hey, what's wrong with me? Nothing. You are perfect as you are. You have no need to prove yourself, You don't need external validation. I'm here to remind you I love you, that I am here to support you no matter what we go through. I got you. And when we feel the loneliest, that's because our inner child is just simply amplified within. And that's usually when people who have the hardest time being alone will seek outside of themselves for some form of validation, of proving that they're lovable. I only know this from my personal experience. So last night, I was lying in bed. Hi, Mish. And one of the thoughts that came to mind, see, for me, right now, this is a big time of year when my family spends quality time together. I lost my mom 3.5 years ago. Wait, 4.5 years? Wait a minute. 4.5 years ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. My mom's birthday was Saturday. She would have been 68. That's young. She was young to die when she did. And it was all because she had a lot of grief. She had a heart that hadn't been tended to. She had an inner child that hadn't been held by her. And even though I was her daughter and I could see that, it was something I couldn't do or fix or heal for her. For her. But no matter what, and her nickname, her trucker handle was the Phoenix. And I feel personally like I have taken on that role, that I am the Phoenix rising for her, especially during these times. So, with that said, today is also the birthday of an ex-partner of mine who, in a way, let's just say, also invalidated me and abandoned me in ways that I didn't expect. That's for another time and a deeper subject to even touch upon. If you go back through my journey and travels through Europe for last month and a half, I did bring him up quite a few times, especially because Italy was where we met. And that was 22 years ago. So a lot of melancholy comes up because I am always the first to celebrate others for their birthday, especially my loved ones. And there was a part of me that wanted to reach out and say, happy birthday. But I also was recognizing 22 years ago when he met my mom and how they didn't get along so well. But there was a moment as I lay in bed just reflecting, and I was like, wow. Do you know how much each of us has felt like the misfit? That the old wound gets reawakened, and it's almost like salt in the wound when we recognize, wow, what's wrong with me? Do you remember thinking like that when you were younger? Because I do. And I did. And there are times in my adulthood I can recognize what's wrong with me. Because clearly I'm not for everybody, and not everybody resonates with me, and I'm okay with that on the one hand. But there's still a little scabby wound from my inner child that goes, what's wrong with me? Yeah. And I had to revisit this last night, because then I recognized this old partner, that I also see his awkwardness. And that's one of the things about me, is what I see in myself and I own and acknowledge in myself. I'm able to see as an empath that's aware of my own wounds, the same wounds in others. There is nothing wrong with us, but it's that deep wound that's in the collective. This isn't just isolated to one or two people. And I'd say over these past several years, that's probably a question people forgot about. But a lot of the grievances, a lot of the grief, because from the moment we're born of original sin, we're we're constantly trying to prove ourselves. We don't even know why. But we're constantly seeking our tribe because that's the natural human element, to seek to belong to community, to fellowship, to friendship, to sisterhoods, to brotherhoods, to family, because it's natural for us, just like nature, to want to connect. That's a basic human need. Nothing to question, nothing to throw to the wind like it's nothing. It is a natural aspect of being human, is we all seek to belong to something, to one another, to a greater cause. There's so many's, but underlying all of that is love, is to feel lovable, to be able to give and express love, to feel and be on the receiving end of it as well. And so, yes, I can see, despite the craziness and the awkwardness of the circumstances between me and my ex-partner, that he is also one of those awkward ones. And I can see the wounds in people and have compassion, because I myself feel those same wounds and have healed through so much of it. I am also the product and the child of awkward parents. And when you can look at the patterns and generationally how we pass on our awkwardness, our outsider, our misfit casting, that even those people who may not have seemed they were out of place or felt awkward, still they had some version of it. And where's the first place that we learn this? It's in school. So we go to these schools and we seek to belong. We look for friends that we connect with. Maybe we just hang with a couple people because we're like, they accept me for who I am. Or we try to hang out with people we want to be like because we see they're gaining attention or affection that we ourselves crave. So at what point we compromise ourselves? Oh yeah, Mish, there's no coincidence. This is a really heavy, powerful theme in the collective right now. It hit me like a lightning bolt last night. That how much do we compromise our true integrity, our true authenticity of our beingness? That we change our hair, we wear makeup, we wear certain clothes, we do certain things, we subscribe to activities, sports, clubs, initiations, all to belong. And it really does, it always go back to a childhood wound, an old unmet childhood need from our parents. So if we didn't get enough attention at home, we're going to seek it out with our peers. You notice certain people are natural born leaders. I grew up being told, you're just a natural born leader. You can tell, you can see that in her. I don't know, it just was who I was. It was the essence of my beingness, my soul, what I came here to do. And yet I still felt awkward. I wasn't the most popular girl in school. I moved around a lot. We started out in Massachusetts. I went to a couple different schools. We moved to Maine. I went there. I went to a Catholic school, and then we moved to public schools. And then from there, we moved back to Maine again, or Massachusetts again, and then back to Maine. And then at some point, we went to Florida, and then New York and Florida and Maine again. I don't know. I was all over the place, and it wasn't military. My parents were far from military. Now there's military in my family. My grandfather's on both sides. I have cousins and an uncle, also military. My grandfather was Navy on my mom's side. My grandfather on my dad's side was Army. and my uncle Danny was a top wrestler up in New England and then became a Marine. There's some pretty interesting stories that come from my family. But everyone felt awkward, and you could see that in the way that people behaved. And I know from my childhood of awkwardness, and fortunately, as a result of moving around a lot, it made me have to adapt to my environment more readily, more quickly, and so then it became second nature. Hi, Erin. To where I didn't see it as difficult or challenging. If anything, I ended up craving it because it was easier for me to adapt and overcome. And then I really liked the excitement of meeting new people and having different new experiences. So I went to three different high schools. And the cool thing about that is each single school, well, it was cool and not so cool. In Maine, they had honors programs. In Florida, they had advanced placement. In New York, they had regents. And I was always in the top of the schooling. So I was always trying to keep up and catch up. But yet, for me, it was easy to do all that stuff. But yet, at a certain point, I also got sick of school. I also got sick of cliques because I couldn't understand why people had to be reduced to subscribing to labels and all that. Even at a young age, I couldn't stand that. But I would get along with everybody. And I enjoyed that about myself, but I still felt awkward. I didn't really know where I fit in. I just saw different aspects of each clique and how I could adopt that. And I really liked that, but I didn't like that. And I liked this about these people. And it was confusing because that's what awkwardness is. It's confusing. But isn't that part of the irony of life? Is that we're all navigating our awkwardness with each other instead of acknowledging that, hey, I feel weird and confused. You know, some of us talked about that when we were kids. I'm really confused. I don't know what the hell's going on here. And guess what? Most of us carried this over into adulthood and still do to this day. Doesn't matter how old you are. You can still feel like that awkward child you were when you were younger. And you're just re-experiencing much of those old traumas, much of those old coping mechanisms to get those unmet childhood needs handled, which doesn't mean that it's healthy either. So I wanted to share because I thought this was such an interesting topic, and the way that I downloaded it in such a way that I was like, wow, I was up all night. I couldn't sleep very well because this was just like, oh, this is the reason I have to write my book. This is just one small piece, very small piece, that I could see my mom's awkwardness. I can still see my dad's awkwardness. And that when we don't heal the past, it continues with us, just like a prison or shackles on our ankles. And if you've been following the readings that I've been doing through the untethered soul, that the reality is we can let it go. Awkward. Yeah, right? We're in wards of our own prison. It's just crazy. So just know, if you feel like you've been a misfit or an outsider, you are not alone. And I thought about how nice it would be to have a cuddle puddle of misfits. Then I wondered how many people would show up, and that could get really awkward too. It's just my mind just doing that thing. Anyway. So the awkward child and misfit of unresolved trauma. Think of the movies like The Lost Boys, The Outsiders, The Goonies, Witchcraft. Everyone just trying to find so many shows about misfits and the awkward person. Yeah. And we're not alone. And so I was thinking about like when I went to school, and I always wondered what made people popular. What about those people? And a lot of times It's because they came from a family of relevance, of wealth. Their parents owned something and everybody wanted to be friends with them because if they got friends with them, they could swim in their swimming pool because maybe they were the only one who had, one of the few people that had a swimming pool in the town. In Maine, there weren't very many swimming pools where I lived. In Florida, it's like a dime a dozen. I think most of us grew up with swimming pools. It's little silly things. It's like, oh, well, I like that person because they have a car. How many girls out there wanted to date a guy just because they had a car? Didn't have to be cute. It was just weird. But think about the wound behind that, like the freedom to have a car or have someone pick you up from, because that gave you significance. That made you seem important. There's so many different ways you could look at what you considered popular. So thoughts that arose, and I realized this was still in me, this awkward inner child. And I needed to sit in that and be like, wow, I'm so sorry I didn't realize it was still there, hanging out. And I'm grateful that I recognized this. Or got you away from home, right? Sports, after school activities, the best way to stay away from home. A lot of us would want to stay at the school for those reasons even, right? I feel like an outsider. Awkward children. What's wrong with me? Nothing. But who could tell you that? In an environment where you're trying to fit in, where you're meant to stand out, essentially, to be uniquely you, accepted and celebrated for your uniqueness and your beingness. Meanwhile, we see someone we admire or maybe somebody we like, we have a crush on them. But yet that person has a crush on someone else. And so we look at that someone else and think, what do they have that I can maybe adopt or adapt to and make that person like me too? How crazy the mind is to try to find a way to manipulate, to get the attention that would make up for the unmet childhood need that you didn't get enough attention at home. Just a small glimmer into my life that was coming up and thoughts that came to mind. Misfits. Many of us were, and these were the thoughts we had. All of this surfaced in reflection that today is my ex's birthday and my mom's birthday was Saturday. I don't know where my sister is. That's another story. And she was another misfit and didn't feel quite in the right place, felt like an outsider. It bothers me that I don't know where she is and how she's doing. I wish I knew how and where she was. We were all the awkward kids. Just thinking about growing up, I realized how many of us had all these questions around. What's wrong with me? Why didn't I get picked? What don't they like about me? Why don't they like me? Do I not wear the right clothes? Yeah. Is it because my family's not the right family? Because I don't go to the same church? Or maybe because my parents don't have a lot of money? All of these things that we are judged upon as children based on our parents. Or here's another one. When I was a kid, my sisters and I were abused by a pedophile. And you know the worst thing about that is that the parents of our friends, not all, the parents of our friends actually didn't want their kids hanging out with us, as if we were bad kids as a result of what was done to us. If anything, that's sheer ignorance, first off. If anything, we needed more attention and care and just acknowledgement that we were okay, that nothing was wrong with us. But to, viscerally see, feel, hear the way that treatment was predicated, to witness the behaviors, or to even hear it from friends that said, my parents don't want me to hang out with you. Like, talk about making you feel like less than, feeling like crap, feeling broken, and feeling even like the scarlet letter is on you, that you're dirty, you're not worthy because of what happened to you. What a hell of a way as children to be marked, to be labeled inappropriately when they were inappropriately touched and treated. So these are just little things that happened in my life. That was when I was 9 or 10. Enough said of that. It's so obvious how, as children, we emulate our environment in an effort to receive attention. This doesn't change much as we become adults. In reality, if you think distinctly back to a time when you were a kid, I bet you can remember liking someone because they liked someone else. You looked at that someone else and tried to adjust to become just like them in an effort to gain attention or affection from that person you liked. Just like I said. We all did this at some point. I'm sorry that happened to you. We changed our hair, dressed in a certain way, wore certain clothes, especially designer labels, you know. Some people can afford that. Or get their nails done. My gosh, kids getting their nails done in school. I saw that here in Florida when I was in high school. I thought that was, I used to do my own personally. Participated in certain sports, activities, or functions, wore makeup, anything we thought would make us likable or attract the attention we seek. And then you've got television and magazines, and now it's social media, because when I was a kid, we didn't have the social media. It's like, wow, I don't even know what I do with that extra added. Musicians, concerts, and things like that, like the influence, the dress, the apparel, the styles. I mean, it really has always been there. It's just how much we are affected by it. We don't discuss that. Or that our parents didn't want to us going to certain places because of, energetically or not, you know, they didn't want us to be influenced in the wrong ways. We don't always recognize that when we're kids. We think our parents are being mean, but the reality is that they see something we have not clued into. We don't have the mental acuity to discern what is a healthy versus a toxic environment. Maybe you do. But if it has happened to you, sometimes you just think that's normal, but maybe it's what got you the attention you were seeking to begin with. Old traumas and coping mechanisms to be liked or prove ourselves worthy. So many crazy things we did out of meeting our needs. And we grew up to continue this pattern. How crazy is that? Did it ever really end? If so, when? Can you remember what it took for you to recognize it? At what point in your life did you, or have you, because not everybody has, looked at your life and went, wow, wait a minute. I'm still doing the same thing I did when I was a kid to seek and gain attention and affection from others. In some cases, we think that if we hang out with the cool kids, that'll somehow make us cool, right? And I know people in this, my age, still now, hanging out with who they think are the cool kids in an attempt and hope that they will somehow be cool and popular. Why not? Why aren't we celebrating more of people's uniqueness? Especially right now in this crazy climate of a world. It's like, wait a minute, when you look around the world and people are being told, we're all about equality, but yet if you disagree with us, we'll cancel you. How obnoxious is that? You're okay and we accept you as long as you meet these criteria. We call that conditional. There are no conditions on actual, authentic love. Nobody needs to prove themselves worthy by anyone's standards. But yet look at where we're at in the world today. You have people trying to dictate That one always gets me. How you should be in order to be loved. That's manipulation. That's toxic. Just saying. So it happened in various times in my life. There have been layers. Throughout the years, I've noticed I've been revealing layers. I've been peeling them away, just like the onion. Seriously. This brought up an old wound I had forgotten, the depths of which were still holding on to my inner child. I knew I came here to be a powerful presence. I knew this as a child. Couldn't explain it. Still can't. I just feel it. It's an inner knowing. It's a gnosis. I made myself known at points. Sometimes it was conscious. Sometimes it was unconscious. Maybe I went out of my way in ways to be extreme, because sometimes extreme worked. Again, I know I did it consciously and I did it unconsciously all of my life. Sometimes I was too much and sometimes I wasn't enough in those respects. I was the awkward child, but I was also the awkward adult. That was one of the things I had to recognize and acknowledge in myself. When I think back to when I lived in Naples, Italy, and I was dating Claudio, and that was like really, really crazy, explosive, I would just be like, ah, do you see what he did to me? Playing the victim. But see, there's another conversation around victimhood. We attract where we're at, and I'll get even deeper into that. There's a certain point that if you don't own your shadow, you don't own your shit, it's going to unconsciously rule and drive and own you. And when I talk about that in my previous videos, you can go back. The truth of the matter is, even the victim can't claim victimhood because you have to own your part in the situation to where you are trying and assuming you can manipulate ways to get your needs met. So when they weren't met with that person, what did you do? You called victim. But the reality was, you had an expectation. Most people aren't going to own that shit. They're going to act like, I don't know what you're talking about. They were trying to get their needs met through that other person, and when they didn't meet them and they took advantage of them because they kept on compromising themselves to allow, thinking if I just let them go a little bit further, maybe they'll meet me with what I'm expecting in return. These are those unspoken expectations that many of us have expressed, because what we suppress, we express, rather than own, but yet we condone. How is that? Hey, I did it. I'm the first one to admit it, and that's the only way I'm able to see it. And that when I recognize that, I'm like, ooh, 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 that's kind of icky. But it's humbling. And we have to be humbled, have those come to Jesus moments where we're like, I guess I contributed to that too. And I recognized at a certain point in that relationship with Claudio that when I returned home and I saw how my dad behaved with his wife, and then it reminded me of how my parents were when they were married, I was like, wow, I became my mom and I was poking and pushing buttons to get a reaction out of him, just like my mom did to my dad. And I was like, ooh. And it was all because they had unmet childhood needs that were unfulfilled, and they were trying to play out ways to get the other to fulfill them. Yet they were unaware that really who needs to fulfill the unmet childhood needs once you're aware of them is you. When you give to you what you need, you change that vibration, that energy, nobody needs to validate you. Nobody was ever meant to validate you but you. So that's part of this life game, is that yes, we're all going to have these crazy traumas from our childhood. It's part of the lesson of life is how resilient are you? How aware are you that it wasn't done to you, it was just an experience? That's the hardest thing for most people to understand, is that instead of attaching to everything that happens in your life, energy is supposed to stay in motion. Experiences are meant to ebb and flow. That's what helps you grow, is you just being a part of it, a witness to it. You know, being in this world but not of it. Being the observer, the witness, the experiencer. And being the star of your own show and recognizing how you're meant to serve up on a golden platter to everyone the gift of you, uniquely you. So the awkwardness, I would come to venture and assume, yeah, I'll use that word, that the awkwardness we've always felt has really been just our uniqueness. Not that we're broken, not that nothing's wrong with us. That awkwardness, that misfit, is because you just haven't owned and accepted the who you are, the what you are, the beingness you're meant to exemplify. That this idea that because of this old conditioning, this old programming that literally is in our cells, passed on generation to generation, that's what we're trying to heal here right now, people. That's what this whole collective consciousness is going through. It's like, that's not my story. And that's when you can let it go. And then you may have to do it over and over and over again, but acknowledging it, giving it your attention because it is vying for your attention. Oh, look at you. I'm so sorry. Let's sit with that. It may sit with it and make it, feel the feels. You're going to notice it doesn't feel so great. It doesn't make it a bad thing. But it's acknowledging it, because the layers you have to peel away to get to the real fruity, juicy, sweet nectar, we call it. The essence of who you really are, which is not your thoughts. And we've established that one. So many different things. And part of this is also for my book. So as ironic as I've always sought balance in my life. That's what makes this so interesting, is that I was thinking of my mom in the hospital while she was giving birth to me. She didn't feel supported, and I felt all of that. I want to heal this for my mom. We had each other, even though she didn't feel like she was supported, and maybe she felt alone in the hospital, because my grandmother didn't show up till later, and I can't recall what was the deal that my dad didn't show up. But she had me, and I had her. And sometimes we think we need more when it's just the old BS. It's the belief systems that we're attached to. We were and are equally loved and important to this life, every single one of us. The phoenix rising, because it comes out of the flames of the heart. And I'm healing my heart and my mom's heart through me. As well as many, many others. This is lineage healing. This is generational clearing. And I feel truly blessed to be able to do this work. And it doesn't matter what's happening in the world. We need to be right within so we don't go without. The fawn trauma stress response is also sitting, smiling and looking pretty. It's one of the old trauma responses. You hear about fight or flight. People forget about the freeze or the fawn. So there are 4 F's to trauma and stress response. And they are fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And that fawn is probably more prevalent than people realize. Because my mother's generation and generations before, legs are crossed. Your hair is perfect, your makeup, you're wearing the perfect outfit, you get your hands on your knees. You're being a good little girl. You're smiling, you're sitting, and you're all pretty. And for many, that is the go-to when someone gets upset. Yeah. I talk to myself a lot. I have some of the best conversations, I'm telling you right now. And it made me think, the reason that this fawn one has been coming up a lot lately, and I am a huge proponent for therapists, coaching, mentors, okay? Because I've spent lots of money on personal development and coaches and courses and workshops and events. I've done a lot of work. And I've just been kind of sitting and observing, and it's not a judgment in an unhealthy way. It just makes me realize, as myself, as a coach and a mentor and a lifestyle designer, alchemist, I personally have realized there's something that came up for me in a program I was taking, that a lot of times when people, they follow influencers and then they want to be a part of their programs. They want to join their, their, what do they call them? Signature programs or their master classes, whether it's for relationships or business or like, feminine, masculine or astrology. It doesn't even matter what it is. A good check-in for anyone out there is how much and how easily you are influenced by that person, that you compromise yourself when you do the programs to where you don't want to speak up because you like the person, you admire them, but you don't feel like you're able, you don't feel like it's relevant or something that you can speak up about because, you don't want to hurt their feelings. And secretly, there's a part of you that just wanted to be involved because you thought by being, again, this goes back to hanging out with the cool kids, that if I take their program, somehow maybe that'll make me popular. Maybe that'll elevate me to that same level. And this is very common, very unspoken, but it was something that came up for me in conversations that I realized, wow, I could catch myself doing that. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, Erin. I appreciate it. This is a really big content. This really poured into me because I find it's very relevant for a lot of people right now, is how often we have compromised our own integrity, our authenticity. We're not being accountable to ourselves, but we are subscribing and following people we want to be like. We want to be just like them, secretly, whether we say it out loud or not. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's okay. But you really don't know that person that well. You just see the facade. You just see their presence in social media land. And some people maybe you've met in person and you can feel the difference. I've met some people in person and I was like, ooh, it's not what I expected. Oh, And I'm very skeptical. I'm being flat out honest. I've been around some people and I have a very discerning eye. Like there's a part of me that sometimes will be more skeptical of somebody. And that skepticism comes out eventually as to why. Because my inner guidance system is telling me something. And I may try to gloss over it and assume that, well, maybe I'm wrong about it. But inevitably, it always comes out. And I'm like, shit, my bullshit meter. I need to be paying more attention to that. Like, dang, that sucks. I really wanted to, again, expectations. I wanted to see and feel and experience more from this person than maybe what I got. Have you ever had that happen to you? You're kind of disappointed. You felt a little bit like a groupie. You showed up and you just were like, I'm so excited to see you. Can we take a picture together and put it on your social media? Like, we all do it. We've all been there, done that. You admire someone. We all have somebody. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head right now, but I've been embarrassed feeling like that and then walking away going, why was I like that? Everybody's human. So I try to, my intention is to always just treat the person like another human. I don't want to put them on a pedestal because I don't want to be put on a pedestal myself. We can all fall off those damn things. And sometimes that's a hell of a jump or a fall. And so when this world of influencers, and I have to admit, I must be one or I wouldn't be here speaking, right? We all have to be humble to recognize that there are going to be times people are going to fawn over us. And that sometimes we need to also be accountable to ourselves and responsible to the other to really kind of check in as a coach, as a mentor, that that person feels comfortable to be able to reflect and share feedback that is constructive, that isn't damaging, that's not attacking, but yet is well received. And that, you know, like if you want to give feedback to somebody, you don't feel afraid to do it. Well, what is the worst they're going to do? They're going to write you off. They're not going to like you. And I have had to sit with this recently because I was like, man, I got some feedback to give and I want to do it with an open heart. I don't want it. I know my intention is pure, that I want to assist in the elevation of all people, beings, souls, because we're all here to do big and grand things. Maybe not on the world stage, but in our lives. And so when you want to present something to someone, you have to come from an open heart, because that's the only way actual connection happens, is heart to heart. If you're coming from the head, oh, you're going to get in trouble every time. And you're going to walk away in suffering, and you're going to inflict wounds, because the mind is what leads you astray. The heart won't lead you astray. The head's what gets in the way. You know, like I talk about body alignment when I teach yoga and other mindfulness practices. Tuck that chin in. You got a turtle going on, right? And then you wonder why you got all this pain and pressure in between your shoulder blades. It's the reality is you're jutting your head forward because you're leaping to the future. You're not present in the now. And if your head's way back here, you're way back in the past, reliving it. But in the day and age of all the trauma and all the unhealed adults running around, flinging shit at each other like monkeys, trying to get their unmet childhood needs through one another, slow down, people. If you're seeking someone else to fulfill your needs, it's because you're not meeting them first. And that's the most important healing work you'll ever do, is acknowledging that you have unmet needs, that you have an inner child that feels neglected, that you've been denying it. And even the shadow stuff that you want to deny in another, you don't like in someone else, you're actually denying in yourself. The truth of the matter is, the moment you own it, it won't own you. And you won't keep, you'll cease to attract more of that. That's another humbling piece. It's like you want to say that the other person's the bad person, but the reality is you got something in you that brought that out. And it was brought out for you to reflect within, where does this exist in me? What am I trying to manipulate? Dang, like shit, that's the stuff people don't want to talk about. People don't want to own that. But yet, if you look in the world around us, there's a lot of conversations that we need to be having that people are afraid to hurt other people's feelings. But yet, their feelings aren't being considered either. So you can deny what you feel, but it'll always come back up. So, there was some other stuff I started thinking about when I was young, and some images and memories that were coming up. So just before I started my daily practice today, this continued. And this is where I went into, kind of similarly when I was watching James' video earlier. And it just reminds me that how many of us are tapped into the collective consciousness. And that when you sit and you do your daily meditations and mindfulness practices, and you'll notice there's a theme, and you'll notice everyone who's on track with that. That means we're all tapped in to the same stream of consciousness, and that's what we're working on. Yeah. When you change the way you look at things, those things change. That is the ultimate power of attraction. The law of attraction is how you flip the switch of the mind to see things differently than you have perceived them based on your past, your experiences, your stories, your BS, your belief systems. As soon as you change all that, poof, everything else changes around you. But it's an inside job. You can't expect the outside to fix itself. And I figured that out years ago because in the midst of that relationship with Claudio, I also did Date with Destiny with Anthony Robbins. And that was one of the more transformational kicks in the asses that I got was, dang, if I stop behaving in reaction to everything he does, his behavior would change. And I put it to the test, and it's a true story. Because the way he was responding to me was no longer like the bear being poked. No, it was more like, wow, she changed up the way she behaves toward me. I don't know how to deal with that. Let me just let loose and let go. And it was much more loving. And then eventually in 2010 is when we ended things. But that was 2008 when that was really volatile. We started in 2007. So a good 3 years of helping each other. I don't know how much I helped him, but I know how much it helped me evolve and grow through a major relationship. And he was also another Leo. So imagine that fire. So here's a great one. I was listening to a podcast with Aubrey Marcus, and I forgot, it was Robert, what was his name? Robert something. Really cool guy. And he made a comment, and that's what clicked in me. You know, we talk about the spinning of the earth, or we spinning of something. And think about the term as above, so below. When you look at a spin going clockwise, if you look at it from the other side, it's going to be going counterclockwise. That's basically the polarity, the duality, that in one exists the other. You can't say that it's going one way. It's how you're looking at it, how you're perceiving it in your experience. And you're experiencing that. So it is not of you, and it is not your thoughts about it, but it's just an experience. As above, so below. These are the opposite sides of the whole. Wholeness is acknowledging the duality within all. The this and the that, the true and the false, the masculine and the feminine. It's in everything. Everything has polarity. Where you see evil, love also exists. They need one another to exist. You only see from your point of reference. Not how things are, but how you are. And what I really loved was, this was what was funny. I think Aubrey was sharing one of his plant ceremony journeys, and this cracked me up because it made sense to me. And I've seen it myself in different ways. But he said he saw this devil, evil character, and then Jesus arrived, and it was like, oh, shit's gonna go down over here. You got dark versus light. But when they saw each other, he said they ran to each other, and then they embraced and started having this sexual kissing and experience. And I was like, yeah, because it's the merging of the dark and the light. It's the knowing they exist because of the other. It's the ecstasy of wholeness. That's some really powerful stuff. But see, we're not necessarily able to go there in the world, are we? We want to say, those that be, the powers. We give them titles and labels like that makes them better. I don't know why. I'm over here going, quit saying that. Quit calling them something that they're not. You know, it's like you're feeding them that power when you do that. It's, if you really want to affect the world, disengage, turn it off, flip the switch, and work on you. You want the world to get right, you got to get right within you. You are not the victim of your circumstances, but of your consciousness. Your unconscious consciousness. Your unconsciousness. See, that's why we have to make the unconscious conscious. So you will no longer play into that fear game. They're not even who or what you are. They're just experiences. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll acknowledge that the only reason you fixate or find darkness is because that is the aspect within you. That's the big kaboom in your face. It's that which you're denying the most within yourself, that you're rejecting it in another. Sit with that. Sometimes it corrects words. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow. You know why they call it shadow work? It's because you're afraid to shed light on your pain. It's because that's the aspect you fear the most in yourself. That is really, truly one of your biggest gifts. Because you've been conditioned to believe that the dark is scary, is evil. And so you've actually labeled that in yourself. And the fear of others seeing you in that vulnerability is actually what dampens us. It's what weakens our electromagnetic field. It's what makes us feel powerless, believe it or not. But when we can claim that and own that, that makes us more powerful. Because that vulnerability and that claiming of that shadow is where we come back to wholeness. What you deny, again, what you suppress ends up being expressed. The shit shows, people. That's why we got such a shit show. That the more you don't want to deal with something, you push it away, that balloon, that ball just bounces up even more up in your face. And a lot of times people think, oh, they don't see that. I'm over here going, I see it. Yeah, it's not even opposite. It's the complement. The shadow complements the light. Without the dark, you wouldn't see the light. And the same, without the light, you wouldn't notice there was dark. It's not the opposite. It's the complement. Always remember that. When someone tells you polarity, duality, they're complements. They're not opposites. I like to liken it to being on the pendulum of life where we go to one extreme to the other. But do you notice it's not like they jump a track or anything. They're still on the same length. They're just going equal distances in the opposite directions, but yet they are complementing each other. And when I like to say to people that when you're way over in the joy or you're way over in the pain, equally the other exists. Yeah. I know. I love what my shadow shows me too. It's some crazy ass, ish. So, again, it's often your deepest pain and unresolved trauma that you're denying in yourself. And when you embrace and own it, your life will balance out and you will level out. These are the things that I just write. This is my journaling. Love your dark and your light. Most of the world is actually finding themselves staring right back at them, but unwilling to claim and own it, so they claim victimhood of the outside world without regard to the fact that it's all within them, just projected out into the world that simply just mirrors it right back at them. Hello? Anybody resonate with that? Why does this still keep happening to me? Because you keep telling the story and you keep putting it out there and you haven't actually looked within where it really exists. You attract where you're at. You think you're the victim of your circumstances, but you're the victim of your unconsciousness. Make the unconscious conscious. Acknowledge that perceptions are projections. It's both the same. And the perception is based on experience from the past and all of the BS, all those stories, those constructs. So they're screaming justice, I want justice, but going without to seek it when it will always be with them until they go within and become one with it. Free that stuck energy to flow and let go. That really is the essence, like what I've been talking about for a while, the push-pull. I don't want this experience or this past. It's like, you don't even have it. You just keep talking about it. That happened to you when you were a kid. Can you, free up your inner child? Can you just let that go? Yeah. Yeah, how can you know the heights of love? And that was something I told a girlfriend years ago. If one didn't know the depth of the shadow, how can they know the height of their love? Like, this is the truth. I had a girlfriend. We went out to the beach and she was just upset because she was so infatuated. I will say infatuated because I won't say love, because love is also easily to let go too. But in the same sense, I understood the premise behind it. And she said, I'm just so sad, sick of being hurt. And I'm like, the depth to which you're willing to go into love so deeply, the gift is given to you, served up on a silver platter, often without a bow. Here is the pain that goes with that too. That the deeper you dive and give it your all, the higher you'll rise. But you'll also fall too. So if you're giving it your all, you truly are loving from the depths of your heart and soul, and you're expansive and you're growing, then something happens to make that all come crashing down. The price of that pleasure is the pain, and that's the gift. And it complements it. It's not the opposite. But understanding that we are all, again, life is a series of waves, of cycles. It's water, it's fluid, it's meant to be moving. And when we hold on to something, we don't want to let it go, we stop the flow. And that is not natural. Life is meant to be continuous experiences, not held on, not hoarded. We have to be willing to ebb and flow, let go and grow, learning and discerning, lessons and blessings. This is all the beauty of this life. Where did I leave off? True shadow work, doing the work, is humbling yourself to see you are all of it, yet none of it too. It's all just experience that you cling to and won't let go of. So while you need to claim and own it, you also need to release your grip and let it go. This is the paradox of life, let's say, because none of it is yours to keep. It's free energy and it's meant to stay in motion. I like to keep notes too, because, moving on to the next person for their experience in this life as expressions of God's source energy. But you're not free unless you allow and set yourself free of the energy you cling on to and hold so tightly to. You can't separate any of it, yet you see it as separate from you. It's quite the paradox. Here we cling, yet screaming, it's been done to us. Why did this happen to me? But you're holding on so dearly, so tightly. And we're the ones doing it to ourselves. Such crazy humans we are. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. How's that helping? How's that working out for you? Boy, I'm quite humbled by my stuff when I look at all the stuff that I've done. Felt a little crazy and embarrassed at various times in my life, especially during the whole Claudio scenario. And sometimes during Larry, and I can look through my relationships and go, wow. Has anyone ever considered how sadomasochist humans are? It's a true story. They cry wolf, yet they are the wolf. So you're calling yourself out, but using someone else as the perpetrator. You're projecting that. But the reality is that's all you. Ooh. Oh, really? Yeah, really. We're capable of the most heinous of crimes, but the one thing that stops us from committing them is our critical reasoning and a clear conscience. If you're really honest with yourself, I guarantee you have had thoughts about things you would never actually do, but you allowed the thoughts to cross your mind. Been there, done that. Hey, we keep repeating the lesson over and over again. The question is how many times until you go, see you. I do this quite often in my own life where I'm like, you trying to trip me up again. I see that as the universe poking me. Hey, did you get the lesson? Did you get it again? I'm going to try it. I'm going to test you every once in a while just to make sure that you got the lesson already. I'm like, I see you. I see you trying to do that again. Pull that one on me. Boy, the quicker I am on it, whew, I feel like I've been saved by the bell, literally. I don't know how many times, like I'll go out with my girlfriend and there'll be some weirdo who come up and they'll play this little cat and mouse game, and it's very passive aggressive. Some of you have experienced it. They're hitting on you, but they're instead of complimenting, it's more like trying to cut you down. Like, excuse me, could you move that? That I can't see the lights behind you because you're blocking them. Like, why would I find that attractive, or even that pickup line works? Like, I'm just like over here going. In that particular case, I was with my girlfriend at the beach, and then there was two guys, and the one guy said that to me, and then my girlfriend looks at me afterward because they were all talking, and I felt catatonic because I was never given the opportunity to respond or say anything. I just stood there like, y'all are talking over me, so I don't really care. And eventually they left, and my girlfriend looked at me. She goes, "Why didn't you say anything?" I said, "I was never given a chance. It wasn't worth my time, nor was it worth my breath." And so I looked at her and I said, "Do you want me to give you the rundown of what transpired just now?" And she didn't see it as clearly as I did, but I outlined it out immediately. I said, "First off, if anybody ever comes up to you and think they're being coy, or they think they're being cute by cutting you down as a pickup line," I said, "that's very immature." I said, "Who the hell wants a relationship that starts out like that?" Because if they're doing that in the beginning when they hit on you, they will be doing that in so much more, and they're testing you in the very beginning. If you pay attention to the way people behave and the way they treat you in the first encounters, you get a pretty good glimpse into how the rest of that relationship's going to unfold. How they're going to treat you. Yeah, red flags. And when you have been in abusive or traumatic or, relationships that are toxic or unhealthy, when you wake up to those relationships, especially if you've ever been with a full-blown narcissist like I have, those are serious lessons. And if you didn't learn in those lessons, it's going to hurt going through it again and again and again. I'm one of those people. Teach me, show me the first time. I want to catch on like that. I don't want to repeat the pattern. I don't have time to waste, especially in this day and age. I'm like, don't waste my time. And it's mostly because I know I've got bigger shoes to fill, that I'm not going to waste myself with beta moves and people who who dominate and want to control, and they want to. I've experienced plenty of that in my life, especially when I was in the military. It's crazy, and it only gets worse from there. If they're showing you their true colors, trust them. Don't be making up excuses in your mind and stories. How many of you have all done that? Like, oh, I'm sure they really didn't mean it. And you create a whole story around them being a good person when they just showed you who they are. It's not what they say, it's how they act. Trust their actions. Anyway, I also like that another thing that I've written down before from Aubrey Marcus, and it's so true. You will save the world by savoring it. The truth is, you want to find your ecstasy in your divinity. You are all divine. You are all worthy. And there is nobody outside of you that is going to be able to validate you but you. And that's the bottom line. And that is the lesson of this theme for all of us awkward misfits that felt like outsiders growing up. That we had to have those experiences to recognize the awkwardness is the fact that we weren't being true to ourselves. That we were seeking to fit in where we were meant to stand out. How many of you heard that before? Do you really understand and get what that means? Because what that really means is you got a whole lot of gifts in you that you need to start pulling out and serving out. That's what service is about. Whatever that looks like for you, whatever that feels like, get excited. Because there's nobody else like you. And there is someone who is seeking you. On that note, I think I'll go make some dinner. And I really appreciate you showing up tonight. And to all my awkward, misfit outsiders, I love you. There's nothing wrong with you. If anything, that was not the question, because you are the answer. What's wrong with me? Why don't they choose me? I remember it very well. It might have been painful back then, but now you take that pain and turn it into your purpose, because you are here for so much more. So from my heart to yours, I love you. Remember to smash that like button, share. Sharing is caring. Be so kind and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Show me that you are getting this, and spread the love, because you never know who needs this message. Because if you're here, you just needed to be reminded. And we're all here to remember. Oh, I love you too, Ava. Have an amazing evening.